For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joey Chen. Thank you. I am an old journalist, but I'm not talking about news. I've never been on ESPN, but I'm talking to a pro football player.
Not currently.
Well, yeah, but I know a lot about long snapping now that I didn't know a couple weeks ago, so it's all good. And yeah, so you might be wondering, like, what is she doing? And what's he doing? Because I just told you this guy is a football player. Green Beret. Well, did I lose that? Green Beret. Right? Thank you. With the strips. But you know what he's here to talk to us about? Service, sport, and speech. Okay? And those are all things that Nate Boyer knows a great deal about. And that's why he's so important to the conversation that we're having about the First Amendment. Right? He is absolutely at the center of that. Because really, at the end of this, I mean, okay, the heavens have opened up on us a couple times. But what's really important is that we begin to think about the First Amendment in all of our lives, like how it really applies to every day of our lives, those freedoms. Even in football? What? Okay. So here is where Nate Boyer has a distinction that no one else in the NFL has ever accomplished. The most controversial play in all of football. Nate Boyer, ladies and gentlemen, is the guy who inspired Colin Kaepernick to take a knee. Now, I don't know. I mean, that's not a political statement. That's a pretty big thing, right? Like, this guy inspired Colin Kaepernick to take a knee. Not necessarily what he intended to do, but it is what happened, right? So we're going to get to how that happened. Now, I mentioned to you that Nate has a history of service, and his service goes all the way back to, this is a guy who on his own dime, right, started his service, started working relief work in Darfur in Sudan. In what year?
2004.
Okay. When things were, spoiler alert, not so great in Darfur, okay? This is a guy who voluntarily went, not supported by any organization, went to support and help with relief services to folks in a really horrible situation. And then you came back, and of all the things you would choose to do, you were how old then?
23.
Okay. So I don't know what you were doing at 23, but Nate Boyer, having been in Sudan, people are laughing like, ooh, what was I doing when I was 23? Okay.
When I wasn't there, I wasn't always doing great things. So, you know what I mean? Like, there was a reason I went there.
Okay. Yeah. And there was a reason when you came back, you chose to do what?
I joined the military.
Not just the military, with a particular ambition.
Join the Army.
That's good so far.
I wanted to be a Green Beret.
Wanted to be a Green Beret. Now, I don't know what y'all think about Green Berets, but in my mind, I'm a little short here. In my mind, oh, now y'all have to pay attention if I don't fall off here. In my mind, oh, making cameramen crazy. Sorry. In my mind, a Green Beret is a guy who jumps out of airplanes, gets shot at, maybe has to shoot at other people. Pretty intense stuff, right? Why did you need to be a Green Beret?
Well, when I found out that in the Army Special Forces, Green Beret, that's what we wear in our head, and that's what we wear in our head, and that's sort of the slang term that they call us. And to your point, the famous ones in cinema are John Wayne in the Green Berets and Rambo, John Rambo, Sylvester Stallone in the Rambo movies. But that's not really what we do. That's a part of what we do, but all of our missions are by, with, and through Indigenous forces. So there's a humanitarian effort to our work. We go to Afghanistan or Iraq or Timbuktu, wherever, and we work alongside, we live alongside, and we fight alongside post nationals. So those people become, our brothers and sisters in arms as well. And what we're doing is trying to build up a force that can defend themselves. And what we're really trying to do is bring people together from a region that oftentimes are very torn apart. So there's like so much more to the job than this smoldering cigar and the bullets. We don't wear we don't have bandoliers strewn across our chests like that's.
You don't?
No, we don't.
Oh, such a disappointment. Because I was going to ask you to come in full dress. Okay, so now bona fides in service, right? Serving communities, serving in the military, right? And then you come back, and you were also loyal to the game. So, let me tell you what, Nate has like a history of walk-on. Walks on to Darfur, right? Walks his way on to the Green Berets, and then you come back and walk your way on to, I know I saw some Texas Longhorns earlier.
Yes, I went to the University of Texas. The most interesting part about that to me, from the walk-on perspective, is that I'd actually never played football in my life before I went to Texas. I played baseball, I played basketball, I played soccer. I loved sports, but football was always my favorite. And I was sort of a late bloomer, a little small growing up, and my mom didn't want me to play. And then by the time I was 13, 14, and probably could have played if I wanted to, I was afraid I was going to get benched or, get cut or whatever. So I didn't do it.
You're a guy who loved football.
I love football. I grew up in the Bay Area, the 49ers dynasty. I grew up with 5 Super Bowls from the year I was born until I was 13 years old. And Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Ronnie Lott and all these Hall of Famers were my heroes. I wanted to be a 49er one day. I wanted to play football at any level, but especially, in college or the NFL. And that regret of not playing stuck with me until I was 29 years old and was transitioning from active duty to the National Guard and walked on to Texas.
Walked on to Texas, and then...
And then what?
Ooh,
You tell me.
Then you became famed for a role, the most influential role on the field, right?
Oh, okay. Yes, so I walked on as a safety, but I was not fast, and I was not good at football, to be completely honest. Not as good as those guys, anyway. So I started long snapping, which is, if you don't know what a long snapper is, it's the guy that hikes it between his legs on punts and field goals and extra points. It is the most thankless job, maybe in sports. It's you don't have to be the most athletic. You have to be consistent. You have to perform under pressure.
But everybody needs one.
But you need one. Everybody needs one. You need a good long snapper. So that's what I did, and I ended up earning the starting job my sophomore year. So I started for 3 years at Texas as the long snapper.
And then you graduated, and?
Yes, I graduated. I got a bachelor's and master's from the University of Texas.
In communications.
In master's in advertising at the communication school there. And then I was not drafted, but was signed as a free agent with the Seattle Seahawks in 2015. So I was 34 years old at that time, which made me, at least in the modern era, the oldest rookie in NFL history. With one of the shortest careers in NFL history as well, but that's okay.
But he made it count. And I wanted him to underscore all these things so that you understand that this is a guy who cared about service to his country, cared about service to communities, cared about football greatly, loved football, put himself on the line to some, you were willing to take a little humiliation on that.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, yeah. All right, so then Nate spends a little time with the Seattle Seahawks. Not the most likely guy to end up on the regular roster. How's that? And in fact, not. But somehow, something happens. It's 2016, right about this time of year?
Yeah.
Right about this time of year. And, now we're going to get it again. This is a sign. And there is you all will recall this, football fans, there is a moment where all of a sudden, Colin Kaepernick is noticed not standing for the anthem. Okay? And it's almost an accident. I mean, apparently he had not been standing for a while, but somebody, I think a fan got a picture of him sitting, and this became, news people blow things out of proportion. But sorry, say that among my own people. But here's the thing. All of a sudden, it's the conversation. And the Army Times, which is a tremendous publication that serves the military, really is. I think they've done great work. Asks, a lot of people ask what you thought, because here's a guy who can speak from both the military side and the sports side to this particular incident. Can you talk about what the open letter you wrote in the Army Times to Cap was about? What were you trying to say to him?
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit real quick. So I played in one game in Seattle, right, in 2015 in the preseason, and the preseason of 2016 is when Colin was sitting on the bench. So in that one game I played in Seattle, the equipment manager asked me before the game, "Do you want to lead the team out of the tunnel with the American flag?" And I said, yes, of course. He noticed in college at Texas that I did that every game. I would lead the team out of the tunnel with the flag. And in college, the anthem is played while the players are still in the locker room. So I was never on the sideline for the anthem at that time. But in the NFL, as everybody knows, that's what happens, right? So during the games, before the game, there is the national anthem is played. The players are on the sidelines. Traditionally, they all stand with their hands in their hearts, kind of in a line. And that's just what happens. And so that one game I played in, I did that. When they played the anthem on the field, it kind of took me by surprise because I was used to college where it had already happened. So I wasn't prepared for that moment. And when I finally found the tallest flag in the building, which is way up high in the Seahawks Stadium, and I put my hand on my heart, the song starts playing, I got really emotional because I was thinking about friends that I'd lost and people that were still serving and people that had come back home and didn't follow their American dreams or feel like they didn't deserve it or whatever, like I did. And it just kind of broke my heart in that moment. And so I just wept. And so fast forward a year later to Colin sitting on the bench during the anthem. And when I first heard about it, I was hearing it from other people's mouths and not from Colin's mouth about why this was happening. So I made my initial I don't even call it a judgment, but my initial reaction was disappointment because the Niners were my favorite team. I was a huge Colin Kaepernick fan because we were a really bad football team since that Super Bowl era until he was there. And then I'm like, he's not standing for the anthem. Like, what does he hate America? Like, what's the deal? And it just kind of frustrated me. And then I went back and I watched an interview of his he did in the locker room. It's 18 minutes long. And I encourage everyone to go watch that initial interview, because he talks about why he was doing it. It was in protest of police brutality and social injustice and racial injustice and inequality. And so that was the reason why he was doing this. And he said, I don't want to stand until things change. I don't feel inspired to stand. And when I heard that and why he was doing it, I thought, okay, like I get that and I respect that. I may not, feel great about the fact that he doesn't want to stand for the anthem just because those symbols are very special to me because of my experience, my relationship to them. But I understood that. I respected that.
And that's the letter.
So that's why I wrote the letter. So I wrote this letter to the Army Times. Basically, it was just like, hey, this is my experience. This is what I spent time in the Darfur, which inspired me to join the military because I gained my patriotism in the Darfur because of the people that were there that were so just grateful that an American would leave what we have here, because we do have a lot here, to go there and help. And so that made me feel good about this place. And I do feel good about this place generally, for the most part. And I feel very good about the opportunity we have here, not just the opportunities for ourselves, but the opportunities for the rest of the world. We can do a lot and we should do more. But anyway, I wrote this letter. I said, this is my experience. This is why I feel this way. This is why those symbols are important. But I respect what you're doing. At the end of the day, when I took the oath to join the military, I took the oath to defend the Constitution, which includes 1A, the First Amendment. And you are exercising that right, and I respect that. And I look forward to the day that you are inspired to stand once again. I'll be standing right there next to you, Nate Boyd. That's what I wrote.
Now, you didn't think that this was going to turn into very much of anything. It's not like you were getting up to advise Colin Kaepernick what he should do.
No, you know, I as you mentioned, I got reached out to by a few news organizations to come, and I think they wanted me to come on and sort of debate the topic, and I didn't want to do that. But the Army Times, they reached out a couple of times and said, you know, you please just write whatever you want. And I said, all right, I'll write an open letter, just my personal feelings. And honestly, I had a glass of wine and I sat there on the couch and I banged it out and I sent it to them, and I sent it. Did I hit it? I sent it to the Army Times, and they published it the next morning, and it just kind of blew up.
So now, who wants to talk to you but Colin Kaepernick himself? So you go, I'm going to jet through this a little bit. You get called, you go down to meet him before a game he's going to play in San Diego. And here's Nate. And Colin Kaepernick says, what to you?
Yeah, we sat down in the lobby of the team hotel in downtown San Diego, like the gas lamp district, if you know San Diego at all. And we're just, it's me and Colin and Eric Reed, another player for the 49ers, who actually knelt with him that night later. But we sat around this little coffee table right next to this big bay window, and there's people walking by outside the window, like taking selfies with Colin because he's all over the news, and he's very recognizable. He's a huge guy. And we just talked about, honestly, we talked like two guys would sit there and talk in a locker room who are getting to know each other, who joke about a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't even remember half the stuff we talked about because it was like very lighthearted and very much like, this is kind of crazy how big this thing is becoming. I mean, keep in mind, this is 2016, late August, early September, right around then. And this is the Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton election. So it's already a very divisive time. People are looking for anything to just, be angry about, I think. And so with all that going on, we talked about that. And then we talked about, why he feels the way he feels and his background and all these other things that were really interesting. And then he asked a lot about me. He was very curious about, my journey and my story, and he had a lot of respect for the military. And he had said that in that 18-minute interview, but he also reiterated that to me, and it didn't feel like lip service, and there was no cameras around, or it was just a very intimate conversation.
Man to man.
Yeah, man to man. That was just, it just was like two dudes having a cup of coffee with no coffee. I mean, that's really what it was. It was not this wild thing. And at the end of the conversation, or towards the end, he asked me, he said, look, I got a lot of respect for you and what you do and what you did and the military. So is there a way that you think I can protest that aren't going to offend people in the military? And I was like, no, there's nothing you can do. It's not going to offend some people. Like, of course, there is no perfect protest. I mean, protests are meant to be uncomfortable anyways. I said, but in my opinion, you sitting on the bench, sort of by yourself, like isolated, it just, to me, this is just me. I don't speak for the veteran community or the military, but to me, I just feel like it's not the most inspiring thing. I think you should be alongside your teammates, whatever you do. And the only thing that makes sense to me is to be with them. And he said, well, I agree with you, but I'm not going to stand. I can't do that. And I said, well, I think our only option here is to maybe take a knee. I mean, to me, it's still respectful.
Whoa, time.
Yeah.
You said take a knee.
Take a knee. I said to take a knee. I said people take a knee to propose to their future spouse. People take a knee to pray. When a player is hurt on the field in football, out of respect, players often take a knee until that player is walked off the field or carted off the field. And it's universally a pretty respectful gesture. People take a knee when they're knighted. I mean, you can just look at any culture, and I don't think kneeling is ever really seen as disrespectful. And he agreed. He thought that was actually better. Like, kind of in that moment, he just said, all right, I'll do that. I'll take a knee. So
let me be clear here. Nate Boyer is the guy who came with this idea. Nate Boyer. Did you realize the blowback? I mean, essentially, you have created like
A storm.
well, yeah. Do you realize how this might be received?
No, I didn't realize how it might be received, and I also want to make sure everybody understands, like, this was Colin's protest first and foremost.
Can you say? Yep.
This was Colin's protest first and foremost, and you know, I was simply answering a question. I didn't overthink it in the moment. It was just a conversation, and I just thought, maybe this. I mean, that would be more inspiring to me, or not a compromise. That's not the right word, but like a middle ground that maybe makes sense. And I think showing that you're willing to adjust is powerful in a way. And he agreed and just kind of rolled with it. But I never told him to protest. It was not. Yeah, it was not my. It wasn't my fight even, really. It was Colin's fight, and he's done so much beyond that, and a lot of people have. But I was just impressed with him in that moment of his willingness to take that into consideration and to consider an entire population of 20 million or so veterans in the country, and that to be important to him because he understood that those people, good, bad, and different, like they take that oath to defend the First Amendment, to defend the Constitution, and that's what he was exercising. And I thought that was pretty incredible.
So I want to ask you, before we get hit by lightning, which may be some sort of otherworldly comment on what you did or said, but I'm just saying. Look, any number of people have responded to what Colin did, what other athletes have done for things that they believed in, right? Like Muhammad Ali or Tommy John or Jesse, any number of athletes. In this case, I think there was hey, dude, you're getting paid a significant amount of money to throw the ball. Just shut up and throw the ball, right? I mean, where do you come down on you're an athlete, you are an influential figure to millions of people. Is it a bigger obligation to stand for what you believe in, or to think of yourself in I know we're going to get it by lightning.
No, we're not.
Is it more important to use your platform to speak in this way, whatever it is you're trying to speak for, or is it more important to say, you know what, the focus of these 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon is a game?
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, no matter who you are and what you do, if you just stuck to your job and you didn't have a personality or an opinion, that's not interesting. That's not American to me. Like, that's just not. And it doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to do what Colin did or do what anybody did and speak out. But if you feel compelled and that's important to you, then I think you have a responsibility more than an obligation to do so with that platform. When you have a platform like that, if you feel a certain way, or if you're standing up for other people, like that's what Colin talks about and has talked about a lot. He talked about it then, and since then, it was like a lot of what I'm doing is not just for what I've experienced, it's for what a lot of other people have experienced. And I have this opportunity, I have this platform, I have a voice, and I'm going to use it. So I think, that's just what I believe. I don't think anybody, no matter what job you do or where you fit into society, or what your label is, that's just what you're supposed to be. We're human beings, and in this country, most of us are Americans, and what that flag is supposed to represent to me is that freedom, is that right, is that opportunity. So you absolutely should utilize that if you have it.
I think we're going to get hit by something, but I do want to just. Wow. I do want for you to speak to this before we. Could be our last words. Before we get to our last words, and that is this. You were willing to give your life for this country. You were willing to put yourself out there to take care of others. But really, in terms of your military service, is there a connection between that and the right of people to say something so offensive, however offensive it might be to you, Nate Boyer, or to any of us? Is there a connection between those two things?
No, there's absolutely a connection there. I mean, first of all, in the special forces, our motto is "De oppresso libera." De oppresso. Oh boy. I think that. Oh, no, we're back. De oppresso libera means to free the oppressed.
Those of you who haven't studied Latin,
Yeah.
we're having a Latin lesson.
De oppresso libera means to free the oppressed. And when I signed up for the special forces, I wanted to do that as a soldier, but I also wanted to do that as a human being. Actually, more so, I wanted to do that as a human being. So if I could be a part of that in any way, even if it's small, I want to do that for the rest of my life. And, you know, I just think, when you become a person of service, when you're in the military, if you don't do that for the rest of your life, or that's not a part of your soul or part of your being, it's just, you don't feel whole. And a lot of veterans struggle with a lot of things, but for me, it's feeling like I'll ever do anything as important as I did before, being a part of that. So if I have the opportunity to do that, and to continue to fight for those that can't fight for themselves, and I'm not saying Colin Kaepernick or all the people he's representing can't fight for themselves, but I want to be a part of helping those that maybe don't have, that full opportunity, that full voice. And I want to help that message be heard by people that normally would never listen. And so maybe there's a group of people that'll listen to a white guy that was in the military that maybe would never listen to Colin Kaepernick. And if they can understand that he was willing to talk to me and listen to me and have a conversation with me and adjust and make a change and do something different through our conversation, to honor me and the people that I served with, that they should at least lend an ear and give him that opportunity to not only speak, but to really listen to this man and understand, like, his experience is very different than your experience. All of our experiences are different. And, that's a great thing. That's what makes America great, truly. But we have to take that opportunity to listen and to truly absorb and to not judge and to just know that we're very fortunate to have what we have here. And like we talked about earlier, that First Amendment, like that is what we take the oath to defend above all else. It is that Constitution. That's when I put the hand up and said the words to join the military, that's what I was defending. It wasn't the flag, it wasn't the anthem, it wasn't these symbols. And I will die for the person that would burn an American flag right in front of me today. I don't want that to happen. I don't want to see that. It's made me happy, but that's the freedom that I fought for. And that's why this place is like no other place. And we have the opportunity and the potential to be the greatest in the world. We might not be, but we should be, because of that Constitution, because of that First Amendment.
Yeah.
I want to give anyone we've got this different sort of intimate space here. If anybody's got a question, I know you're from another free speech organization. If people have a question for Nate about this experience that he's had, it's a pretty extraordinary one. You guys are left out because I'm not crossing the water with a wet blanket. So either you can yell real loud or, yeah. But if anybody does have a question, I would like to consider that. I want to ask you, from my own perspective, knowing what you know now, Nate, would it have been better if Colin had either just continued to quietly sit? Would it have been better if he had stayed in the locker room until after the anthem was played? Or maybe he forced a conversation that, right or wrong, agree, disagree, whatever. Do you look back at that now and think, okay, as an athlete, you had this moment and the way you chose to use it was this? Right or wrong?
I mean, I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about, would I say something different? Would I do something different? I've thought about also, Should Colin have listened to me? Should he even have asked me? Should we even have met? Like, I don't know. Life would have been a little more chill, maybe, for me, personally. Obviously, if he never had protested, yeah, maybe it'd be a little more chill for him as well. I mean, I don't even want to pretend to. I don't even want to pretend I don't even want to pretend to guess or imagine like this stuff that he's heard and the things that have been said to him. Like I didn't experience anything like that. The worst I had is I had people I served with, unfortunately, tell me I was a disgrace to the Green Beret for even having a conversation with them, right? And that sucks. That sucks. I don't want to hear that. But as much as I've dissected it from where I stand and my decisions, like I would not have done anything different. I don't know. And I'm not saying I handle everything perfect in my life, because I certainly don't. I'm a mess, just like everybody else. Don't get me wrong. But I'm proud of the fact that I was at least willing to go there and not be afraid of that. And I don't regret anything I said. I'll tell you this. This is like a little kind of hidden nugget. You know, when we talked about the kneeling, he asked me if I would kneel with him. And initially, I considered it. You know, and we talked about it. I said, you know, maybe I will. You know, I think I should to show that I'm with you on this. And then after, you know, we parted ways before I met him on the sideline later that day. If you don't know, I actually stood next to him that night when he knelt for the anthem. And there was boos in the crowd, and it was really a surreal moment for me, because I've never heard that before. I've never been in a room where people are booing during the national anthem, which, you know, like I said, means a lot to me. But this guy's kneeling, and I thought, like, well, this will be great. People will understand that he's doing something different, and it's out of respect. And of course, no, that's not what, you know, people see what they want to see. They hear what they want to hear. But I would not change anything that I did. And like I said, I even considered taking that knee, and then I changed my mind because I was afraid. And I told him that before the moment. I said, like, I can't do it. I'll stand with you, though, if that's okay. And he said, all right, you know, I respect that. So, you know, that's one of those things. It's like, this all just kind of happened fast. And like I said, it was a conversation that he asked the question, I answered the question. I answered it as honestly as I could. And I didn't have any intentions going into that meeting. And I don't think he did either. It is what it is. And it's crazy that that's now a part of history. And kneeling, the fact that he did that, not that it was my idea, the fact that he did that, it spread a lot of other places. Like people in the UK, soccer players football players with a U, take a knee before games often. And like the Premier League and other places, out of respect for that movement, not for the anthem or anything like that, about what Colin was doing and why he was doing it. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And so I'm grateful that that's the way the conversation went, and that he actually followed through with that and continued that, and, you know, hasn't really wavered on that. And many other players joined him in that.
Nate Boyer, thanks so much for talking about this. Thank you for your honesty, answering some work of the First Amendment and the Constitution.